This is Shu Hirata's Let's Talk Japanese Fight Sports with Charlie Jewett from sogokaku.com. Let's begin. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Shu, how you doing?
Very good, very good. And good morning and good evening to all of our listeners. Thank you for listening again. And I'm keeping up this every couple of weeks pace.
Keep it going, yeah.
Yeah, let's try to do that. And all right, so let's talk about this. Not much big news in this couple of weeks in Japanese fight sports, but one of them is
whenever there's a big event like Super Rising, especially in Japan, there's always kind of like what I like to call like the hangover effect, where there's a couple of weeks where things still settling from the event. I think other promotions wisely don't plan too much stuff around the same event.
Right. But now the man who is like, it's fair to say almost every Japanese fight fans are kind of wondering about Mr. Kazama. He's in Thailand right now.
Yes. He from what I understood, it was kind of a last minute decision to go to Thailand, and that he was originally planning to fly fighters out to JTT in Japan. But because of the timing of the upcoming match, he didn't have the time to get the fighters he wanted, like the type of fighters that he wanted. So he figured if he went over to Bang Tao in Thailand, he would get more access to this kind of sparring partners he needed. And I think I read that JTT has a close relationship with the Hickmans.
Yeah, I guess, the coach, Billy coach, I don't know him personally, but I guess he knows George Hickman well, had some association in the past. So, yeah, I know George well, but so I guess I heard that's where he went to Thailand. But that means his fight is confirmed.
Right. I mean, I think you've sent some fighters to Bang Tao before, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing that he prefer fighting at 125. I'm not sure if that's first fight. It's going to be 125 or not.
Well, I mean, if it's bantamweight, I read he hasn't fought in bantamweight for almost 6 or 7 years, so I'd be kind of surprised. But I just thought it's interesting that he went to Thailand, because that kind of tells me that maybe he feels he needs to brush up on his striking for this fight.
Not necessarily, because I think Hickmans are very true believers about wrestling.
I know.
So
he took his coaching staff from JTT went with him. So Ellie, the French guy that's kind of in charge there, went with him, and Billy Bigelow, who's kind of the wrestling coach at JTT, went with him as well. So I mean, he's clearly putting a lot of his own resources into this fight camp. It's at Bang Tao, but he's kind of hosting his own fight camp there.
I could see that. So, I mean, for him, this is very important. He had to win this fight. And I wonder, I really wonder if he fights at 125 or 135. I was talking to some of the coaches from ATT, and they didn't know who he's fighting. And they all thought they would be much safer to fight at 135 at first and see how he feels. Because 125 is a territory that he's not really familiar with.
Right. Well, based off of the way that he's talking in interviews, it sounds like the opponent is set.
Yeah, sounds like it, right?
The UFC is just waiting to announce it.
But I'm surprised nothing got leaked yet, because they usually get leaked fast.
Well, I saw some people saying that they think it might be Pantoja.
I read that somewhere, right? And we'll be at 125.
We have no idea. None of us have any idea how reliable those sources are. I mean, there's already been a bunch of names listed for potential opponents for him. But I mean, it sounds, the way he's talking, the fight's set, it's coming up soon. It was supposed to already have been announced, but they decided not to announce it then. So I think it's going to be coming up pretty soon.
I know, I can tell this on the record that I mean, UFC do care if some, big news get leaked. That's not good. But face it, it get leaked all the time, right? I mean, it's
Right.
almost 100%, and there's actually really no way to stop in it. Sometimes it get leaked
Right.
from their teammates or management or commissioners. Who knows, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so uh, and that's why I'm really surprised that nobody's really writing about his opponent yet.
Well,
So
I mean, it just goes to me. I think that Japanese fighters seem much more willing to keep secrets. I guess that might be a broad stereotype, but
I'll tell you this for the record too, that yes, the Japanese fighters almost 100% they will ask me to confirm with the UFC to make sure if they can talk about it.
right.
Meaning, yes, they're very, very good about that. But it's almost recently 100% all of our clients before even signing about the agreement, the news gets leaked out all over the place.
Right.
So I
Well, yeah,
mean,
it is pretty interesting. Do you think it's going to be like in Australia or someone where it'll be easy for him to get the visa?
well, I mean, I think that's what they were talking about first, right? Australia
Right.
show against the Uriah's fighter, I think.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think so because UFC can get them visa. I mean, even the US shows, I would say they can get it in 3 weeks, four.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So even they do this all the time. So I really don't think the visa is that much of an issue. You know,
Yeah. No.
it's really about the matchmaker's decisions. I
Well,
think.
it sounds like the UFC is putting him in a pretty high profile fight in his first fight.
I
So he
think
has
so. They will
nothing
have
to
to.
worry about. He has nothing to worry about with the visa.
Yeah, exactly. The point is, I heard he's getting a very good deal for Soko in the first time UFC, signee. I think it's a different case than the regular 12 on 12 start, whatever. And I heard it's much better than so-called Crow and Gracie kind of deal. So
Yeah.
it only makes sense for UFC to actually bang him against the top guys.
Well,
You
even
know.
outside of his UFC pay,
Mm-hmm.
you have to think that he is now like the prize of his sponsor, Hori, who's always obsessed with making top Japanese talent.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to think that he's getting some good support from Hori and his sponsors, in addition to the UFC money he's getting. So,
Oh, of course, right. So he's
yeah,
maybe almost like a case of like a Shohei Otani.
right,
And
yeah,
he can afford to defer 98% of his salary
yeah,
or whatever that is. It's like the same case because he makes so much money outside the field.
exactly.
So I actually wouldn't be surprised if he makes more money on sponsorship than the purse he's going to be making in the UFC.
Because I mean, he's cultivated these sponsors who just want to see him become a UFC champion.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they care that their logo won't be in the
Yeah,
octagon per
that's
se.
really not about logo exposure and none of that. I mean, some of them, yes, but it really is about being the supporter of Kai
Exactly.
Asakura. Yeah, so very interesting because I actually heard about this from my other client Shindu because
Oh yes.
he right now. Let me tell you. Let's talk about this. What do you think about his decision against Ogikubo in the last fight?
We talked about it a little last time. I, it's bad when the judging commission feels like they have to come out and explain what the scoring.
Uh huh.
And I really like the Japanese method of scoring the fight as a whole,
Right.
but I do think it has some weaknesses in its application.
Yeah.
And I think the rising aggression generalship damage, it's too like you either get it or you don't. There's no like splitting the points up. It's either you get the 50 points for damage or you get 0 points.
Right.
And I think it almost needs to be split up more to really show like the reality of what's going on in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Because MMA has changed so much. Just because Shinryu's on the ground on the back, I don't think that's him in a bad position. That's kind of where he wants to be.
Right.
And Ogikubo is not trying to finish the fight from those positions.
No. Well, I can tell you this right now. Of course, Shindu first complained a lot, and we had the conversations with the rising, matchmakers and blah
Yeah.
blah. And the bottom line is that first, his cornerman thought that he was winning fight, so the advice was to cruise on the
Which is
third round, like not
terrible
take,
advice.
which is not a good advice. And and one of his cornermen did complain to Shingo right after the fight at the venue, you know. And but after reviewing all the footage, they came up with the decision that this it's so close. It's nothing to really bitch about to begin
Yeah.
with. Yeah, and on top of that, many thought that the judge was correct. I think you have to choose the winner there. It would have to be Ogikubo, and I think there's a point that I Shinju right now. It's kind of half understanding the concept and realize that you have to go for finish because you have to finish strong in the judging
Well,
criteria and rising
we've
and
talked about it before, but I mean, especially when they're scoring the round as a whole and who got the closest to finishing, these judges, it's no secret, they score like who's doing the best at the end of the fight way higher than they do who's doing at the beginning of the fight. I mean, these judges
right.
have a short-term memory, and I think you can't coast in the end.
I mean, I had to explain that so many times to many fighters who came back from Japan and complained about losing a decision. Like I thought I won, but like no, but you have to finish strong. You got to win the third round, for sure, kind of way.
Well, I've
But
spoken to fighters before, and
uh
even though the 3-round system, like the unified scoring, is so ingrained in their minds that even though Rising tells them that the scoring is different, it never really takes root. And you
yeah,
have
I
to
know,
explain to them, it's like this is not scored by the round because they'll be
right,
like, I can't believe I lost that fight. I won the first and second round. And you'll be like,
right.
that means nothing. Like they didn't score it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really the cornerman and coaches has to really be aware of that. And that's when it comes to the point that I had a conversation with Shindu that he has never really had a head coach. He always
Okay.
trained on his own and going to places. He basically brought in a cornerman who can hold the pads and do a little bit of stuff to prepare for the fight. So it's not like that cornerman has been watching the entire fight camp. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's very, very different. He's never basically had a head coach. So I kept telling him, you gotta, change that. And he finally realized this is a point of his career. He would have to really join team or at least to be under some head coach's care, you know,
Well,
at
I
least a
noticed
couple.
that you made the little heading, Shin, you're thinking about Japan top team.
Yeah,
What I
he's
thought was interesting is Bigelow's like Instagram says like his job title at JTT is he's like the head of fighter development.
really.
Right.
Which I know he's a wrestling coach, and I know Ellie is like the overall coach, but it makes me think that JTT is thinking much more about having a really good coaching staff for the fighters
Mm-hmm.
and kind of mirroring what's happening in some of the more famous gyms outside of Japan. So it
Yeah,
seems like an interesting place, to say the least.
right. And I think they're doing the right, going towards the right direction. I think, and the point here's what is interesting. I want to talk to you about that. Shindu now knows Kai personally, so he reached out to Kai, and Kai says, "Oh, I'm going to Thailand, so why don't you come with me?" But he just came back from Thailand in terms of Shindu, so he says, "No, they're gonna wait." So apparently, the Kai is coming back in 1 month. So after that, he wants to try it for JTT. Now, here's a point that I always have to talk to Japanese fighter about that they're not used to paying coaches. And I told them, you gotta pay. You know what I mean? Like all these coaches who's gonna spend time with you, like come up with all the entire fight camp, be with you, go to the fight with you, all kinds of stuff. They're professional, So finally he came to a realization that he has to join team, has to be
Mhm.
able to, drop 10%, whatever that is that the team requires.
Yeah.
And in return, they have to take, make sure that you get prepared for this fight, And yeah, so I think he has spoken with Kai and, try out for the team because interested in the team. But he also, I told him, stress, ask how many percent you have to pay, be professional about it. You pay what they ask you if it's not outrageous, of course,
Right.
So yeah, and you gotta let coaches do their job. Don't go floating around all the other places. I mean, otherwise you would never know that you gotta get the full coach's ability out of him too. Right? So it's very interesting. In Japanese fighters, they're just not used to paying because the whole industry is being so poor in a way. The prices are so low that
Right.
it's just the concept of paying. Cornerman or coaches is just we're not there. But
Yeah,
no,
because I mean, a lot of these fighters are making like $300. So I mean,
Exactly.
paying a coach $30.
You take it to the family restaurant and give them a dinner for that day, and they'll be gone, right? Kind of stuff. So, yeah, but right now, I think, and now I'm going back to that little bit of subject that because of the success of Rising and sponsor culture in Japan, I would say it on the record. I mean, the sponsorship money in Japan is far better than what's happening in MMA here in North America.
Right.
I mean, like, face it. I mean, even the UFC, you make what, like a couple of first fights, like $4,500 per fight, or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
It was way easy to surpass that, even considering the weak yen. You know,
Well, I mean, I can't move 2 steps outside of my apartment without seeing Naoki Inoue's face on a million Bank of Yokohama posters.
right? So, I mean, obviously, that's way high than what normally get here for wearing shorts or putting logo on the shorts. I mean, I think that culture is kind of gone. The bubble has bursted a long time ago here too. Anyway, so
Well, I mean, it's an old story, but I mean, the Reebok deal just kind of killed the sponsorship market in the U.S., right?
but you know what? I think in a way, though, for the most of the companies, they weren't making any returns on the investment. They were paying
No.
pretty high money, dollars for fighters, and they weren't selling enough shorts or t-shirts or whatever that is they were making. So yeah, so I think they came in the right timing.
Yeah.
Because right now, do you hear any fighter complaining? Really, not really, right? I mean,
Well, I think they've also, but I mean, that might just be though because fighters that were making the pre-Reebok money, there's probably barely any of them left.
that too, right? Yeah, none of them around. I mean, so right now the trend is about like maybe get a sponsor to like to advertise their product on Instagram kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I cannot review, but some of the deals that my clients are getting are pretty good for those Instagram, advertisements. So,
Yeah.
but that's the one thing we really don't see that in Japan. It's pretty interesting. And
yeah.
you know what's so interesting? That I did brought some of the deals from here in the States to sponsor, to advertise on Instagram, and only twice, but both of the time, the Japanese, my clients, they both rejected it. They care so much about how they look on social media that they don't want to advertise on their Instagram.
Well, what I've noticed is most fighters in Japan after their fight, they kind of like take a picture of their shorts and their shirt, and they kind of like make one post on social media, like thanking each one of the sponsors.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, they do that, right? But I guess they feel if they specifically advertise one product
Yeah, they don't want to do like a commercial or something.
Commercial kind of thing. They feel it ruins the images. And it's so funny though. I'm facing a little bit of interesting issues now that when fighter gets famous in Japan, there's always some friend around them approaching and says like, "Oh, let me take care of your marketing and branding." And those people still saying like, "For your branding, you should advertise on Instagram." But I tell them right now, some of the money that offer that they're getting is very good for like for usually like 3 posts, 3 stories, and
that's kind of funny that you mentioned the branding because I remember back when Rising was kind of like in its heyday on terrestrial TV in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
They had all their stars doing like office chair commercials.
Yeah, yes.
So it's kind of interesting people have changed.
Yeah, so the sponsorship market in Japan is quite different from the States, right? I mean, as you could see on every Rising Fighters shorts, there's at least like 20 companies.
Well, it's not the same as kickboxing in Japan, but it is a lot of sponsors.
Right. And it's funny that because it's not on so-called Chijoha, terrestrial broadcast, that so-called the level of compliance is pretty low. So I won't name names, but actually a month ago, one of the sponsors that sponsors the Rising Fighters and got arrested for cheating on elderly for insurance money kind of stuff. So it actually happens, every 2-3 months. But these are the people, they pay pretty good money for just putting a little logo on the shorts. Nobody pays a couple $1,000s here, but they'll easily surpass that, So you imagine that times, 10, 15, whatever. So
I was thinking of you the other day, actually. I went to an MMA show And I saw this girl sitting in the crowd, and I was like, she looks really familiar. Then it occurred to me she was the former Round girl that was dating the guy that did that crypto scam.
Oh, how is he doing? Is he still in jail?
I have to check in on that. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah,
That guy's got to be in prison or something.
probably. Yeah, I mean, it's funny about the Japanese media. So they don't really do too much follow-up reports.
No, because
No,
I think the girl because I think the girl that was in charge of Potential ended up not going to prison.
Is that the girl who went to see UFC in Dallas?
No, that was the girl. That was the girl that was like the girl that didn't go to prison. I'm thinking is the one that was like allegedly Chihiro Suzuki's sugar mama that stole all that COVID relief money.
Oh yeah. She didn't go to jail, so they couldn't prosecute her then, probably.
Right. I think she ratted someone out or something.
It's just not enough evidence. If it's not a 99%, they can win. They won't prosecute. Yeah. Ah, interesting. But she was punished publicly already, penalized big time.
Yeah, but I mean,
senator or something like that. No,
she was like it was much lower. It was like a local, like Osaka government official.
Oh, but all right. So, wow. I wonder what she's doing now. How is that? I mean, I'm curious too because I never really asked anybody about this. But how is the YouTube money culture now for the fighters in Japan?
Dead. It is
dead,
absolutely
right?
dead.
Pretty much. Yeah.
If you looked at the people that were really trying, like Shizuka Sugiyama and Kana Asakura,
they quit basically.
Their content just quit. And then I spoke to them about it, and I think the more you do it, when you first start doing it, they're like, it's fun. But then it just becomes a job.
Yeah.
And you're like, why am I doing this? I have like a personal life. I train all the time. This is just eating into my outside time. And if you're not someone like Mikuru Asakura, who legitimately makes a ton of money off of YouTube, it's just not worth the views they were getting because
I wonder, do they hire staff or does the staff approaches them and they want to be the part of it kind of stuff? I mean,
I imagine that I think Kana Asakura was like using her brother, but I think Sugiyama is doing it all by herself. And I think if you're editing and doing that all yourself, that's just got to eat up so much of your time.
I mean, she's doing that all by herself. Yeah, it must have eaten up all of her time.
And at first, I think
mother too, wasn't she? Like
she's a mother. Yeah, there's like I think there's like some general excitement because people were like cross promoting, like Tenshin would come on and stuff. But yeah, I think people realized that to be a popular YouTuber, you have to consistently make content and release it, and people just weren't willing to do that. Like Mikuru, say what you will, that guy produces a ton of content, and he's on schedule, and he has a ton of views, and he's able to keep his audience engaged.
I guess for the YouTuber who has tons of those subscribers, it only makes sense to keep cranking out the content, right? Because you don't know what's going to hit, and they need that, right? It's the counts that's going to get them money, you know? Yeah. So
the follow-up comment of remembering when fighters would always plug their YouTube channels after their fights. Thankfully, that era is over. So I think
exactly
right now people probably are leaning more towards just general social media like Instagram and stuff like that.
Instagram, or it seems like a fighter is getting into an argument over X, right? I mean, that's probably more of like a sponsorship or whatever, like the hyping up for the fights, that type of stuff. So since Super Rising is over, do you think if fans in Japan are talking about the next Rising title fights?
I think, as I said, I think there's kind of that Rising hangover effect. It tends to happen like every January after the New Year's Eve show.
Yeah.
And it happening after this Super Rising might be, we're still probably waiting for the numbers, but it might be one of the biggest Rising shows ever, to be honest.
In terms of Rising show, yes, it is the biggest one for that. Yeah. And it is a second behind the match in terms of pay-per-view sales. But it's second behind, but that doesn't mean close second, But they sold the pay-per-view well, I heard, so but so, I mean, nobody's talking about the next title fight, Satoshi, Naoki, whatever.
I think they will when they start promoting it, but Rising is still kind of in that wind down cycle. the YouTube content they're producing, the Twitter content, that social media content they're producing is still like confession videos related to the past Rising event and like the winners and losers and stuff like that. And the articles are still kind of reflecting that. I think in a week or two, you'll see it shift to the upcoming Rising show instead of the Super Rising show.
Okay.
And when that happens,
those on the YouTubes and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
Rising's weird. They got really into YouTube. Then I feel like they got really into their that streaming service, so they took everything off YouTube, and now they're putting everything back on YouTube, which is nice. So.
I mean, I see a few complaining that like I wouldn't buy pay-per-view if I can see it a week later, but really not true, right? For the other pay-per-view buyers, for sports fans, like to see it live.
That might be true for a fight that has like medium interest, but if it's a fight like Mikuru versus Ren, nobody wants to watch that not live. Like everyone wants to watch it live.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. So that one's worth it, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, in terms of, I'll tell you this very interesting story. So yeah, I'll tell you. Of course, Rising is working on some promotional pieces, and like they're making the Rising confessions on YouTube, and they came up with a proposal that Naoki is from Toyohashi, which is little close to where Satoshi trains, Hamamatsu,
Yes.
Yeah. And I have taken him to train at that gym when Koike was there and stuff like that. So the confession staff was asking, what about the idea of Naoki going to Satoshi's place and train and stay one night in his house and then stop by his parents and Toyohashi would interview there, all kinds of stuff. But as you could kind of imagine, that Mr. Naoki always liked to stick with his own plan, and of course, why would he stay in somebody's house, right? So
that all sounds really weird.
That went out of the window, but I think he may be willing to go and just train with Satoshi for just once,
Yeah, that'd be
for
great.
me purposes, confession, So we'll see what happens after that. So yeah, I think they're working on promotions, and obviously they probably have trying to push those two title fights.
Oh, absolutely.
Basically.
Absolutely.
And I wonder, I do you think the people think Satoshi is a favorite over Gustavo?
It's just such a coin toss because their styles are so contrasting. Sosa's got to be the favorite going into it, but if Gustavo's able to stop his grappling somehow and keep it standing, it's gonna be a very bad night for Satoshi.
Yeah, then in terms of odds wise, the next fight, Naoki versus Sucho Kim. I mean,
now that fight's interesting to me. So I know that you represent Naoki, but I think Naoki's had a little bit of difficulty recently. And Kim is just such like a stamina powerhouse.
Yeah, he is.
The guy is like an Energizer bunny. A guy never gets tired.
Right.
And so I think this is going to be a hell of a fight.
Too. Yeah, this is going to be a tough fight. Yeah.
I mean, either one who wins, this is going to be like a grinding, unless Naoki knocks him out or something, but this is going to be a grinding affair. I think both fighters better come with a lot of cardio because this is going to be pretty wild. I'm actually very excited for this fight.
I think cardio is the key, but more of like a grappling cardio is the key.
Exactly.
Yeah, because this is not the aerobic striking cardio. It comes into play. I think it's going to be a lot of scrambling, right? I mean, and takedown defense, all kinds of stuff. So
when Kim fought on the Rising versus Bellator card, he fight Archuleta. I thought he won that fight, to be honest. I thought he got screwed over by the judges. No, but yeah, I mean, Naoki's really good at sticking and moving with people. He's good at getting people to like keep them off of him with his jab. So I think this is an interesting fight because their styles are so different, and I always like watching that clash of styles.
Yeah, so I think they came up with two good title fights, right? I think that's something that most of the so-called Rising hardcore fans will be excited about.
Well, Rising's really good with their promotion, right? So the UFC, I think, would have been confused with Naoki and not been able to promote him well.
Yeah.
But Rising did a great job promoting him. And I think he's actually coming into his own more recently. He's like dressing more confidently and stuff and speaking more confidently when he's in the ring. And they also did a good job promoting Kim with the whole, like, his wife won't let him buy a Nintendo Switch until he wins. So I think, which kind of endeared him to the Japanese fan base. They're like, get him his Switch. So
yeah. I guess it's true that a lot of fans watch YouTube and social media. It seems like that is really where they pick up all the news. I mean,
everyone I know that
Rising is really not on so-called TV in Japan,
no.
right?
Well, a lot of people I know that are big Rising fans,
Mm-hmm.
Confessions plays a huge part in that because Confessions builds the stories because you kind of need that pro wrestling like angle of like, why am I rooting for this person?
Right.
And Confessions does that.
I mean, it's simple theory. I mean, yeah, I mean, it happens on everywhere. So, and for the fans who doesn't know, the Confession is also produced by Mr. Sato, the same guy who produced the Pride. Those opening videos and everything else.
He also did Dream too, right?
Memes and also Rising.
Legend.
Right.
He's a legend.
Yeah, he's a so-called legend in the business, right? So, I guess that is playing a big part, right? So.
Well, especially since they're no longer on Fuji TV and they don't get like the terrestrial bump anymore. They really have to take the emphasis on themselves and promote themselves, which they're doing a great job on YouTube.
Right. And two other fights is Izawa versus Kana, which is Kana's probably retirement fight, right?
I've seen a little bit of like a negative reaction to this fight, people I've noticed, but that just might be the circles I dwell in. But people are just kind of wondering, like,
really,
is this kind of a waste?
Who's going to win? Because it's obvious, right? I mean,
yeah, people are like, is this kind of a waste of Izawa's time? Like, couldn't they put someone to get Kana Asakura's retirement fight against someone else around Kana Asakura's level?
Yeah, here's
have Izawa fight like a strong foreign fighter.
I think the fans need to understand this one concept the Rising matchmaking have is that they need to establish a rival for Izawa. It's the same thing for competing in flyweights. You know how Ogikubo and Shinryu, they both kind of finished it that way. And face it, and Shinryu's not, Ogikubo's not get any younger. And Shinryu's still young, but it's not like banging him against some unknown fighter from outside Japan sell tickets. So they're signing those like 2, 3, 4, I forgot, flyweights right now, and let them fight on September's and maybe perhaps November shows. If some of them look good or gain popularity, then they'll be ready to fight Ogikubo or Shinryu. That's how they matchmake. So this is actually a bad sign for me because this means they're still not signing any new girls to establish the weight class.
Well,
they're using the talent they already have, and this is the stage for Kana to retire, and for Izawa to just get an easy W. I think another one. So, but then who she's gonna fight next, right? So they're gonna have to in the division.
You remember when they were trying to push? This is gonna date me how old I am. You remember when they were trying to push Brendan Schaub in the UFC?
Yeah.
And they just had him fight like the Legend Killer, like Mirko Krokop and Big Nog and all this stuff. And that rubs the fans the wrong way. People don't want to see fighters they like get smashed by some young talent. Like makes them they need to, as you said, they need to build up a rival for Izawa, which is weird because I feel like someone like Oshima already kind of has that rivalry going on a little bit. They just need to nurture it and let it grow. Or they could just bring a foreign girl over in and let the foreign girl pick up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They need to sign like 3, 4 fighters and let them scramble, like see who's looking good or,
you could almost calling it the Grand Prix, but just have a bunch of people come over and let somebody emerge that is worthy of fighting Izawa.
Right.
That the fight fans are interested in.
Right now, Izawa doesn't have that type of popularity among the Rising fans too. So if they have to do some kind of tournament like that to discover a talent, then it would be Deep's job, I think.
Well, it's also weird to me though, because it's like it's very obvious they're trying to like get her bumps from people. It's like, oh, by fighting Miyu Yamamoto in her retirement fight, she'll get some of that Yamamoto rub. And she's fighting Kana Asakura, she'll get some of that Asakura rub. But I don't think she's getting anything from it. I don't think anybody cares that she's fighting in those fights. She needs to be smashing. I think the way you promote her is you kind of promote her the same way they would promote someone like an Ayaka Hamasaki, who not a big talker, but is very skilled. So you just let her speak in the ring by smashing high-level foreign talent.
Yeah,
So they
exactly.
need to
I mean,
bring, yeah.
but the problem is it's really hard to sign high-level foreign talent when most of them wants to go to UFC and they're
I know,
waiting for
but
the Dana
that's,
White's contender series. That's this whole
that's the
trend right
beauty.
now.
That's the beauty of atomweight, though. Is the atomweight division is like
Exactly.
dead
So
now.
it's a super atom weight, whatever, 110, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
108, whatever. Yeah. So it's very difficult because most of the atom weight girl are still waiting for 115.
Yeah, they want to blow up,
Yeah.
trying to blow
Yeah.
up to 115.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't want them to get. I'm tired of them just like bringing Thai and Korean girls over that like don't know what they're doing. But anything, let's get somebody.
Well, then you know what? I think it's just the bottom line that the Sakakibara has to see a potential in Zawa. And I'm not talking about fighter potential. I'm talking about as a merchandise, really, as a product. Yeah, and
Yeah.
as a promoter, you have to understand that. And I think it's fair to say he doesn't see it. To the truth, I think that's what it is. He's not putting his money into developing that division.
Well, all you need to know, I mean, like if they didn't bring Panchan Rina back,
Yeah,
then Izawa has little hope because Panchan Rina sold way more tickets than Izawa probably has.
probably. But I think, knowing Mr. Sakibara, he's really heavily looking into women wrestling from Olympics. I really think he will spend the money on those wrestlers who's going to try MMA than spending money on Izawa, to tell the truth.
Remember way back in the day, around the time where they brought Murata over, they were saying that like Rising was working with the Japanese
wrestling. Yeah.
But the problem is, to me, is that when you go down that road, is that these Olympic judoka, these Olympic wrestlers, once they go to the Olympics, they can just become a coach or something, and they'll make
exactly
great money for the rest of their life. So luring them over, you got to pay them a lot of money.
Shinobu Ota is a rare case, but face it, here's also too. They're not that strict as judo, to tell the truth. So it's not that hard to cross over into MMA. And on top of that, if you're like Olympic medalist level, like Shinobu, you usually get a pretty good sponsor. And they'll carry it through to your MMA career as well. So
because with the judo, especially, I mean, wasn't Yoshida essentially blacklisted from judo for a very long time when he went over to MMA and Pride?
So was Takimoto. He took so long to come back. Yeah, yes.
With wrestling, you're right, because I mean, not just Ota, but his coach. What is Minata? What's his coach's name? Miyata. Miyata was also an Olympic wrestler.
Yes, exactly. So it's there's always a cross chain exchange between wrestling and MMA from a long time ago. So
the girl I'd want, if they're going to do that, would be Yui Sasaki, but she's already said she's going to the 28 LA Olympics.
I said that's not going to happen, right? Yeah,
they got to get someone. They got to get one of the other ones.
But I wouldn't be surprised if the Mr. Sakura is like aggressively approaching those athletes.
Yeah,
because it is about him getting more national attentions, right? I mean, and that's the way to do it. And he wants to do something like that, I think.
For those people outside of Japan, to kind of put this in perspective, wrestling and judo are, as Olympic sports, are like two of the biggest sports in Japan. Like if you win a gold medal in that, you're doing commercials on TV. Sure. Everybody knows your name. You're like a superstar. It'd be like if you're like on the NBA Olympic team. So that's like the level that Sakakibara is shooting for when he's going for one of these people.
Exactly. I mean, at least he'll get headline, right? I mean,
absolutely.
For sure.
I mean, Deep Jewels, I know they tried to get a girl that was like a high-level wrestler. She kind of disappeared. Even that, just getting someone at that level was big news. I mean, Murata was big news, and she was just kind of like a minor. I mean, she was a very good wrestler, but she wasn't an Olympic team wrestler.
No, yeah, because she was behind Saori Yoshida. That girl is just too good, getting all the attention. So, yeah, and last fights announced so far, I gotta mention this. I think Rising hoping Mr. Takagi to become a new star here. I think they're ready. I mean, Hagiwara is good. Nothing against him, but
Well, Hagiwara, it's kind of like one of those cases where no matter how many times he loses, he still has a huge fan base.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So they'll keep using him like Tokoro, almost
Yeah, but Tokoro's winning.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So Hagiwara's winning in the beginning, more than winning, but now he's losing.
Oh yeah.
And this may be the fight that Takagi might take over. Some of his popularity of the spots in Rising.
It definitely has like a passing of the torch possibility.
Yes.
Where this is the type of fight where, unlike the Izawa fights I was talking about, Takagi could actually take some of Hagiwara's fans because they're kind of similar people that go forward.
But again, Hagiwara's fan base is a little different too, right? They're like interesting,
You mean the weed smokers from Osaka?
I mean, in Japan, these people like smoke weed, right? Openly, some of them, those guys out there. I mean, I wonder why they just don't get arrested,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
I just think it's funny that everybody at that gym comes out to the same song. It's like,
yeah, it's true.
There's a smoker gym person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true. All right, let's talk about this one because did you watch the fight?
Yes, I did.
Now, what do you
think?
It's
kind of crazy because I know like going into the fight, he really needed the win.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was coming off of a 2-fight skid. And
let me ask you this: do you consider the final of Road to UFC as a UFC fight? Because technically,
that's
not a funny contract.
It's actually kind of funny because I was actually thinking about that earlier today. Right. Because I think he won his Road to UFC fight, but then lost the 2 in the UFC, right?
No. What happened was this: he lost in the final of the Road to UFC.
Okay, so I remember in the old days of the Ultimate Fighter, those fights didn't count, right? Only the main one counted. Only the main one, but the other fights didn't count as UFC fights, right?
Okay, the Ultimate Fighter, the other fights are 2 rounds, so they was recorded as the so-called exhibition fights.
Right, exactly. I remember there's
the final is on the regular UFC show, and it's a 3-round fight. So it was recorded as an official MMA fight, but I'm not sure if that's considered as a quote-unquote UFC fight.
There's some weird stuff going around with the strawweight season, where like Rose Namajunas lost to somebody in an exhibition fight, but it didn't count because it was just like one of the house fights.
No, but the problem. The question that Mr. Kazama has is this: a lot of people are saying that he's 1-2 in UFC, but he feels he's only 1-1 because the final of the Road to UFC against Rinya Nakamura was within the regular UFC shows, but that was a fight to win the UFC contract. So he did not have a UFC contract on that fight. So after he lost that fight, he still earned the UFC contract. So from his point of view, he fought first, and lost, then won the second fight, so he's 1-1.
I see what he's saying, but I think the problem is that people are kind of lazy. People are going to open Topology and ShareDog and see the name of the event that it was.
That's true, right? Because that's not Road to UFC portion. It's like a part of the regular UFC show. Right?
You're not going to like go to the Wikipedia and like read about when he signed his contract. But I see what he's saying, but I think not, because what he's saying is technically correct.
Right.
I think what the perception is going to be is that he's had 3 fights in the UFC.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, no, but here's what it is. He only asked that question because he doesn't like to read about it. The media thinking he's 1-2. But more than anything, he was a little concerned because he's on actually a 5-fight deal because he won he got from the Road to UFC. So when you have to think about ending that contract, if you get released, they'll be able to resign whatever that is. He wants to make sure that we're only talking the conversation within that 5-fight contract. So we're not counting that fight of the Road to UFC.
Exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's the concern he has. But anyway, so he looked really good on the first round.
Yeah.
But on the second round, his weakness always reveals almost. It gets nailed, and his chin goes up. Don't protect chin, So, I mean, what do you think about him as a potential from now on? Because
I mean, his grappling is there, obviously.
But
I do get worried when I look at the record and see that the last 2 fights were knockout losses.
Yeah, that's
this most recent fight was not a knockout, but I mean, you can't tell me he didn't suffer a concussion or something when that guy blasted him in the second. So that's somewhat worrying to me, and I think a top priority would be fixing that.
Yeah, exactly. Because actually, before the road to UFC, that prior fight before he getting the road to UFC, he also got knocked out. Too. He dominated the first round. He went for the takedown. He got kneed in the head. So that's unconscious knockout. But still, Sean put him into the road to UFC. He did well, but still at the final against Lia, got knocked out. That's unconscious. That's two unconscious knockouts, right? That's why I made sure he took enough break.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also in the first fight in UFC, it was not an unconscious knockout or anything like that, but he broke his,
Yeah.
So
Well, even when you're not knocked unconscious, I just think there's like the concussion issue to worry about, and brain trauma happened.
Yeah.
Like it was bad. Because I always think of fighters like Chuck Liddell back in the day, where I think once your chin goes, it's just gone. There's never a way to get it back.
Yeah,
And
actually, that's the current. So, especially in kickboxer, that happens a lot. Once you get knocked out like viciously like that, in high kick to the chin, whatever that is, or tempo, you're never quite the same.
Right.
Yeah, and
he's still a young guy, so I'd like to see him like not go out with his chin up, like maybe defend it a little.
So it's really funny. After the Lee and Nakamura fight, me, Osawa, and Kazama sat down, on the palace. I think it was some fast food because anyway, we talked about that over and over, and I think the way to do it is he's got to learn to fight almost like a Mizugaki, where you always get tucked in, protect your chin, and take the hit with your forehead. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you this something.
Have his own like Philly shell defense, just like
yeah, exactly, and just grab it. But you know why? You know how in the UFC PI, when all the UFC fighter, they go do this thing for evaluations. They make you pull all the stuff and do all the strength and like a cardio evaluation, whatever that all kinds of stuff. And out of anybody in the bantamweight UFC, Kazama had the most strength in terms of pulling, back, strength, that type of stuff. So physically, he has what it takes to grab the fighter and push him down, like with his skills and everything else. So we keep telling, Osawa right after the last fight, Osawa, called, of course. He couldn't make it to the tournament this time. So he was saying the same thing, striking, it takes a little while to get used to it, but just keep doing it. It's only to the point right now that he's got to know how to defend. When he gets hit, naturally, he's got to put your hands up, tuck your chin, because eventually, if he could grab, it could put him into his situation. I think it kind of proved that he can finish anybody, right? So, yeah. If he, improved a lot on those striking defense part, I think his possibility probably winning will go up.
Oh, it will skyrocket.
So hopefully, he's 27. So,
still a young guy.
Yeah, so we'll see.
We have a question. How happy was he to get that $50K bonus?
I'm telling you right now, every fighter, when you have a finish like that, that's all we talk about in dressing room. We're like, all right, let's for the fight. Let's hope that it's going to be a boring fight as hell. And every fight goes to decision and blah, blah, blah. But tell you, they only gave a performance bonus to 3 fighters instead of 4, right, on that show.
Really?
It is. So it's clearly the matchmakers were not happy with most of other fights.
Well, and Dana White seems unhappy recently with match bonuses in general.
Right. I think they came to the conclusion that they are not going to give to the 4 bonuses if they don't think they deserves it, right? I think that's what it is. And in that scale and that yardstick, like when you look at the other fights, I only see 1 finished fight, and all the other fights looks all right, except Carol Rosa, which is our client's fight. That fight was great, but it wasn't many so-called, like close, fight or coming from behind win or like a shocking knockouts or like a fantastic submission, that kind of stuff. So in that sense, I just thought that he's going to take this one, unless if it's something fantastic happens.
Yeah, I think that on some of these fight nights, you'd think that more people would be going for it to get the attention to get elevated to a pay-per-view card or something.
Right, and right now in UFC on the Apex shows, there's no green room, nothing, so you don't hang out in the venue. After you finish everything, your stuff go, and the car is waiting for you back in the hotel. So we're back in the hotel and thinking about he wanted to go get a hamburger, 5 Guys and shakes, which is really good. And then that's when we heard that he got the bonus. So yes, he was very happy. But
So hamburgers were on him.
He'll get it. I think there's a high possibility he'll get it. And the great thing about it is his attitude is this: like, you know what? Now I can invest on my training. Before this,
good.
prior to this fight, he actually went to Bangtao for like a month to train. But all days of Thailand is kind of cheap, so it's cheap to train there is over. From weak Japanese yen's point of view, I mean, it costed him a lot of money. So, but his first reaction was to invest this money on training. So that's a good sign.
That's a good sign. It's a great sign.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll be. I'm trying to convince him that he'll be like, maybe he can be like a Charles Oliveira. When he came to the UFC, he was win loss, right, and made a couple of mistakes here and there. But those experiences made him tough.
Yeah, well, a lot of guys have that story. I mean, you can look at like guys like Damian Maia, who like the striking wasn't clicking, but once they figured out how to defend themselves,
exactly right,
really opened up their grappling game.
Well, I guess the grapplers they need a little bit of time, and I'm happy that at least the Kazama was able to showcase what he had on the first round. I mean, it was obvious, right? Fight in the round. So, but just on the record that his opponent, I know him very well. I know him from his amateur days, and I even signed his recommendation letter for visa and all kinds of stuff. Wow. He trains in Selrongo, so he was training with Naoki, Uruka, Mizuki, and everyone. So he's a very, very nice guy. Good guy. But I also knew he was a striker, so his grappling cardio is a issue, and that's what it was, right? I think, yeah. So the grappling cardio is the key, I think, right there.
Oh yeah.
MMA.
Well, it's a completely different type of cardio, just like the constant pulling and everything.
Oh yeah, it's completely different. It's not really aerobic workout like a kickboxing, Yeah, so that's a strikers. I think that's the one thing about Kai. And I'm gonna go back to the first subject because I was talking to the coach from ATT and stuff. I mean, if he gets to take on these wrestlers, right? Those are the part that he's got to be careful.
Yeah, because we've never really seen him fight a wrestler.
No, not a real like heavy wrestling type, right?
Because like Japan has good wrestlers, but I just don't think it's like he's not facing like Division I national champions. Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I'm very looking forward to Asakura's first fight. Let's see who he's going to fight. If it's Pantoja, it's not a wrestler. So, but jiu-jitsu guy, it's pretty slick.
If he wins, that'll be so huge. The UFC popularity will explode in Japan.
I hope so. But if he loses, like it'll be like a Gomi versus Kenny Florian kind of thing. So we'll see. All right, anyway, so I guess we talked enough today.
Yeah.
All right, so I gotta get going. I'm sorry. So anyway, so
I just want to remind everybody that later this month, Miki Matono is also fighting in the.
Oh yeah, that's right. Road to UFC semifinal. It's the rematch from the fights in Happy Elephant promotion in China. So
everyone pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And it should be a good fight. Hopefully, more Japanese fighters get into the UFC and keep doing well.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. All right, so let's do it again in 2 weeks.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thank you for listening. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.